When you keep at the center of the prophetic, honoring Jesus, building up the church, and bringing strengthening, encouragement, and comfort to others out of love, you avoid most of the abuses. If you're humble and you keep in mind revelation, interpretation, and application, you avoid a lot of the mistakes. And if you soak your mind in Scripture and judge impressions or pictures or phrases by the standard of Scripture, you won't get far off track. If you want to grow in the prophetic, don't move further away from Scripture. Move deeper into Scripture and saturate your imagination and your worldview with the truth of Scripture. Renew your mind. Lean into, press into the mind of Christ the Spirit has given you. Be a Bible person if you want to grow in the prophetic. When you keep these things in mind, at the very worst, what you often get is a lot of beautiful pictures and encouraging thoughts that don't do any harm. The thought or the impression might not be directly from the Lord, but it's from the imagination of a person who has soaked their mind in Scripture and knows the Lord. It's what Mike Pilavachi calls, blessed thoughts. It's just a blessed thought. It's a nice picture. We receive them as such, and we're thankful. But occasionally, when you create this culture of honor around the prophetic, you get a word with teeth. It's precise. It comes with the sense of God's presence. Everyone's soul leaps to attention. We know this is more than a blessed thought. This is a word of the Lord for us that bears real fruit in the life of the church and unlocks something in the spiritual realm. But let me just say a few more things in the spirit of trying to mitigate misuse. A few more general words of caution, and I can't emphasize the word general enough. General words of caution. Here's the first one. Paul writes that in the congregation, this is 1 Corinthians 14, 29 to 33. He writes that in the congregation, 2 or 3 prophets should speak, and the others should weigh carefully what is said. We talked about that discernment piece. And if revelation comes to someone who's sitting down, the first speaker should stop, for all can prophesy in turn, so that everyone may be instructed and encouraged. The spirits of the prophets are subject to the control of the prophets. For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace, as in all the congregations of the Lord's people. The spirit of the prophet is under the control of the prophet. So unedifying content or distracting ways of communicating content will be addressed. If you're being weird, it's because you're being weird. Right? There's prophetic words that I know one story, a woman giving a prophetic word and started flailing around. And all of a sudden, it's very distracting. No one's focused on the word or Jesus. They're just focused on the erratic movements of this woman. She cannot say, well, the Spirit came on me. I wasn't in control. Paul says the Spirit of the prophet is subject to the control of the prophet. So we still need to use our reason and use our head. Is this an encouraging, comforting, strengthening word? Is this an appropriate time to share it? Who should I say it to? Is this way of sharing it distracting from Jesus or what else is happening in the room? All of these things can go through our head because the spirit of the prophet is subject to the control of the prophet. That's what Paul says, his words, not mine. Second, as a general rule, be wise about situations with the opposite sex. Don't misuse or manipulate through the prophetic. Don't use it to win influence or affection. Beware of flattery. We don't need any more stories of guys going up to girls saying, God told me we were going to get married. Or, you should I had a picture of us at the altar. So ditch that guy, hitch your wagon to me. That's where we're going. It's we don't need, God told me to break up with you. It's well, you have to bring God into it. I already feel rejected. And now the God of the universe endorses this decision to break your heart. I just want you to know. It's even if the Lord said something, you just probably keep that part back. And so it's just be careful about that. Third, am I saying that a man or a woman can ever give a prophetic word to the opposite sex. No, of course not. I'm saying, as a general rule, around those types of things, there's horror stories out there. Okay. Third, as a general rule, it's best to avoid anything that feels too directional, where you're telling people what to do based on a picture, on the basis of what you think is an impression from the Lord. Give them space to go away and to pray and to wrestle for, about what this might mean for them. Number 4, as a general rule, it's best to avoid really personal stuff, sexual stuff, who they might marry, right? Like, you get that, right? I got a word about your sex life, and I just want to really speak right into that. That feels like a close friendship thing, not a stranger who, you get what I'm saying. Like sexual stuff, who they might marry, pregnancy issues. Like, I've had a friend who experienced several miscarriages, and she got pregnant again, and someone said to her, with good intentions, I'm sure, God told me that your baby is going to be carried to term, and she lost that baby too. And she lost almost all faith in the prophetic for a time. And so as a general rule, it's best to avoid personal stuff, sexual stuff, who they might marry, pregnancy issues, especially if you're growing in the prophetic. Now, Alita has a story about a word around pregnancy that was handled with great maturity and wisdom, and you might want to ask her about that. Fifth, if you're receiving words, you need what our friend Mike Bedell calls a prophetic pantry. Okay, a prophetic pantry. When someone shares a word, we can put it in an imaginary jar and place it in the pantry of our imagination to revisit it prayerfully over time. And if we know in our spirit that something's off about the word or it's not for us, we can put it in the pantry and forget about it. But that's what I've done with prophetic words that have been given to me. Occasionally I dust them off. I talk to the Lord about some of those words, like Daryl was talking about, I'm living into right now. But we all need a prophetic pantry for when people are sharing words for us. And the purpose of all prophecy, like the spiritual gifts, is love. It's the building up of the body. It's the edification of the church.